What's up, guys? Sorry, it's hot out, I'm sweaty, but here's what we're doing today. We are going to build a custom front splitter, and we're just going to do it out of some HDPE plastic sheet. And actually, sorry, I was wrong. ABS plastic sheet. And here it is. So far what I've done is taken the bumper off and laid it out. I taped it down to the sheet just so that way it'll stay stable as I'm drawing up my lines. So I drew one line on the inside, which I'm going to use to cut the inside out. And that one doesn't have to be perfect just because, nobody's going to be able to see it. The next thing I did was trace it along the outside, which is very hard to see. I just used this colored Sharpie. And then I created dots at critical points. If you guys can see that. That goes 3 inches out from the bumper all the way around. Alright, so after I drew the Sharpie dots and lines surrounding it, I ended up just playing a game of connect the dots with some masking tape. And it doesn't really matter if it's not very curvy, it can be kind of straight. Because eventually the way I'm going to be cutting it, I can just trim it up, eyeball it, just to make sure it's round, and I can always do some finishing adjustments. Make sure there's no sharp edges or turns. On the inside I also lined the edge so that I can cut along here. And then I also marked it. And these are going to stay here. I can take that other tape off, but once I'm done cutting, this will stay on so that way I can align my bumper on that side and this side to make sure that it's in the same exact spot, so that way I have equal distance here as well as on the other side when the product's finished. Okay, so the inside is now cut out. It's cut out real janky, but that's alright because nobody's really going to see it. It's going to be underneath the car. I'll know about it, so that's on my chest, but it's alright. It doesn't bother me too much. So here's that very fine, smooth edge I have going on the inside. The outside I did start to cut, but I couldn't really get to it just because I was trying to reach over the table. So I ended up cutting out the inside first. This edge is a lot smoother. Definitely needs some sanding still, but that's alright. I don't mind taking my time. So here's that very fine, smooth edge I have going on the inside. The outside I did start to cut, but I couldn't really get to it just because I was trying to reach over the table. So I ended up cutting out the inside first. This edge is a lot smoother. Definitely needs some sanding still, but that's alright. I don't mind taking my time. Also, just a heads up, this shit gets dirty. So prepare with a broom, maybe a shop vac. Okay, so after making the cuts, I'm going to use, this is some P40 grit. It's very coarse, just because this is kind of a high density material. So to knock it down a little bit faster, you want to use some of this. But I'm going to use an electrical sander. You don't have to, it's just going to make it faster. But this is just to smooth out the edges. And here are those edges, as mentioned. Still a little bit of curve, but it's relatively straight. Nothing we can't fix. Okay, it's getting a little bit later now. I finished up the sanding and I actually just ran to Home Depot and picked up hardware. Just some washers, nuts, bolts, usual. And make sure they're stainless steel just so they don't rust out, or at least advise you to unless you plan on struggling with them later, because you will. It'll rust and you'll struggle. But okay, the next step from here is to actually put the bumper back on and line it up with those tape marks that we made previously, right here, and these ones, and also on the other side. Just make sure it's in the same place, and we'll end up taping the bumper down to this, just so that way it stays placed, and we'll drill some holes and make room for our hardware. Okay, so the bumper is now taped down, and this is looking like the fitting on the outside, which I'm liking. It's pretty smooth. I have some plans for these corners, but for now, if you notice, everyone's bumper is going to be different, but mine comes up in the front and there's a gap here. So the only place I'm going to put the hardware, obviously, is going to be on these sides. Probably going to do 3. I'll drill separate holes instead of using those, just because those are for your shroud that you have underneath. So I advise just save some time later. It's not going to harm anything. You just have to unscrew it. Or this next step that I'm going to be doing is definitely completely optional. I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you aren't going to be following this step by step anyways. Do your own thing at some point. But my plan for the end of these is going to be like curving it up, so I get like a shark fin type deal coming off the edges by my wheel wells. And to do that, all I'm going to do is mark off an area that I'm going to start to bend at on a piece of tape, with a piece of tape. Maybe, actually, now I'm thinking about this, because I'm going to be using a heat gun. And all you're going to do is get the ABS plastic to a point where it kind of gets flimsy, and then you can start bending it and working with it. And I'll show you how to do that. I'm also not worried about the surface or these Sharpie marks showing up. I intend to vinyl wrap it. It's going to be carbon fiber black, and I'm not going to do a tutorial on that, but I will include it in this video. So here's the line for the section that I'm going to bend. I'm going to actually apply the heat directly along this. Try to do it as even as I can. And then once I start noticing some deformation taking place, I'm just going to use maybe my thumb, depending on how hot it is, or some other tool to grab it, and then put pressure and start bending like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the other side. In case you didn't notice, these are just like welding gloves. I think garden gloves would work. Anything, just try not to touch it with your hands. You might end up burning yourself. So here's the black carbon fiber vinyl wrap that I'm going to be using. You don't have to do that. The surface is just fine. It scratches kind of easy, but it's not very visible, especially from afar, and when you wash it up too. You can also paint this, just make sure you sand it down first. But I'm going to choose vinyl wrap, especially carbon fiber, because the support rods are also carbon fiber, so I'm going to try to match that. Okay, it is now nighttime, and I just finished up putting this vinyl wrap on. It's not the prettiest in the world. I definitely left spots uncovered, and the corners are rough, but that's going to be tucked in towards my bumper. This outside's the only thing it's going to show, and also it's only covering about, with only 3 inches will be showing from the bumper. So from there out, I'd say it's a quality wrap. Alright, after getting her bolted up, this is how she's looking. Liking it so far. The The next thing I am going to do is install those supports just while the bumper's off, and then I'll just put the bumper back on the car and we'll be done. Alright, supports are in and it's time for it to go on the car. Alright, and that's all for today. So just one more time, it was just an 4x8 of ABS plastic. I used my heat gun, router, you can use a jigsaw or even a handsaw if you have to. Sharpies, all in all, and vinyl wrap. All in all, it was under $100 for me, and it gets you a great looking front end. Alright y'all, thanks for watching. I'm gonna clean this shit up. Made a fucking mess today.